With padded practices starting tomorrow, we don't want to think about it, but we have to ask ourselves, who are the 10 players the Buffalo Bills can't afford to get injured? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Believers Talk. My name is Joe, and welcome to this top 10 edition of Believers Talk, where we're going to take a look at 10 players that the Buffalo Bills cannot afford to get injured heading into the 2020 NFL season. Before we do that, guys, I want to remind everyone my name is Joe. If you're new to this channel, guys, you want to be sure to hit that subscribe button, as we are less than 30 days away from the start of the regular season. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. After you hit that subscribe button, you want to hit that notification bell. YouTube will notify you when we put out new content, including breaking news. So make sure you hit that notification bell. And then while you are here, leave a like and let me know what you think about this top 10 list. Who would you have on this top 10 list, and maybe who would you change as far as the order? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the 10 players that the Buffalo Bills can least afford to get injured this season. As many of you know, and if you don't, you're about to find out, tomorrow, Monday, starts padded practices, right? And with no preseason games, they've already talked about, Bills coaching staff already has talked about amping up some of the hits that they will receive during these training camp sessions, where they can have pads in practice. So that might be a reason of concern if you are a Buffalo Bills fan or a fan of any NFL team as far as injuries potentially happening. Listen, every year during training camp, we see injuries, we hear about injuries, and they affect a full season for some teams, right? We hear about ACL injuries, we hear about season-ending injuries that unfortunately just happen in this game. So I am going to name the list top 10 of who the Bills can least afford to get injured for an extended period of time. So we're going to start with 10, move all the way up to 1. 1 would be the least, the person who we could at least afford to get injured for a substantial amount of time. So obviously this list is going to start with number 10. And at number 10, maybe a little bit of a curveball. I'm not going offense. I'm not going defense. I'm going special teams. Now, we know that we have a kicking battle going on, so I'm not too concerned about our kicker as of yet. We all know that we have a punter competition going on, so I'm not worried about our punter as of yet. The one position I'd be worried about in special teams, a guy that we cannot lose, would be wide receiver Andre Roberts, and mainly because of his special team capabilities. Guys, no one really thinks about this, but Andre Roberts was the only player in the AFC to finish top 10 in punt return yards and top 10 in kickoff return yards. Okay, he was a Pro Bowler in the AFC for what he did on special teams. So that, for one reason, that alone is one reason to make sure we keep him. Starting field position is huge in this league. Everyone knows that. So if we could start off with maybe 5-10 yards more than we would with the backups in, we need to keep that guy on the field. Not only that, think about who Andre Roberts' backups are, right? Right now on the depth chart, our second punt returner is Micah Hyde. Now, Micah Hyde has returned punts before. 2 seasons ago when Andre Roberts was injured, Micah Hyde came in and he did serviceably, right? Maybe that was even last year, I forget. He did serviceably. But do you want your starting safety, or one of your starting safeties on defense, the best tandem probably in the NFL, do you want him returning punts? No, of course you don't. You do not want him returning punts. Not only that, Tywan Jones is currently listed as our number 2 kickoff returner. And listen, if you go back to some Tywan Jones tape as far as kickoff returns, it's not all pretty, okay? So Andre Roberts would be number 10 for me. Some of you might disagree, but special teams is vitally important in winning football, and that's why I think we need to keep Andre Roberts on the field. As we go up this list, here is a guy that some of you might have a little bit higher, but when I look at this list, all 10 of these guys are guys I want to see on the field come week 1. Number 9 on this list is defensive tackle Ed Oliver. And guys, the reason why I say Ed Oliver is because I think he's the best of our defensive tackles. Really, you could put any defensive tackle at this spot, right? With the opt-out of Star Latulippe, I'm not worried about our defensive tackles yet, but if another star defensive tackle goes down, then the Buffalo Bills will start to have depth issues, right? Ed Oliver is the biggest stud right now on our defensive line, is our best defensive tackle in my opinion. That's why I have him as someone who we cannot afford to lose. We thought we might lose him for a couple games due to a suspension. That obviously does not look like it's going to happen now that all charges were dropped against Ed Oliver. Let's keep him on the field along with our other defensive tackles. So that's why I have Ed Oliver at number 9. Again, I know some of you might rank him a little bit higher just due to the fact that Star Latulippe is now out, deciding to opt out for the season. But for me, Ed Oliver is number 9. You go to number 8, and guys, this is someone who I think we have no depth at the position he plays at, and that's Dawson Knox, tight end out of Ole Miss, second year in the league. Now, last year, obviously, we saw some flashes, right? We saw some flashes of excellence, and then we saw some dropped balls, some skeptical play out of Dawson Knox. But who's behind Dawson Knox, right? Tyler Kroft, a guy who you cannot rely on to stay healthy over the past 2 seasons. Tommy Sweeney, who we just don't know enough about. Lee Smith, who is a walking penalty waiting to happen. Maybe Jason Kroom. Jason Kroom had that injury last year. Didn't get to see him too much last year. 2 years ago, him and Josh Allen did have a little bit of success. But if you lose Dawson Knox, you really don't have much in that tight end room. So for that reason, I have Dawson Knox as the 8th guy on my list of players I do not want to see get injured. Number 7 on this list is a quarterback of sorts, not the quarterback Josh Allen, you'll see him later on this list, but the quarterback of the offensive line, right? The center, Mitch Morris. Just last offseason, we paid Mitch Morris a lot of money to come into Buffalo and solidify the offensive line. Last preseason, he missed all 4 games due to a concussion. We don't want to see that again. Not only was that his 3rd concussion, and maybe another concussion would force him into retirement, we don't want to see that again, because when he is on the field, this offensive line is just better, right? We've already lost John Feliciano for an extended period of time. The last thing we want to do is lose another offensive lineman. Out of the original 5 that started last year, one thing that we were really looking forward to this year was having all 5 offensive linemen back. With John Feliciano out, obviously, we're going to have a little bit of a change there. Last thing you want to do is change more than you have to. So we love Mitch Morris in Buffalo. I think he is a great guy getting to the 2nd level. We saw it plenty of times on some of those Devin Singletary runs. I'm thinking in particular against week 2 against the Giants. Devin Singletary's first touchdown of his career, is able to get to that next level, right? Is able to read some blitzes so Josh Allen doesn't really have to. Josh Allen can more worry about the formation of the secondary, the cornerbacks, and then he can leave Mitch Morris to worry about the front 7 and maybe, put the team where they need to be on the offensive line. So that's why I have Mitch Morris, the quarterback of the offensive line, at number 7. At number 6, we have another quarterback of sorts. It's going to be the quarterback of the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be your middle linebacker. Listen, Tremaine Edmunds, his first 2 seasons in the league, over 100 tackles in both of his first 2 seasons. I expect more of the same from Tremaine Edmunds. Again, still pretty young for being his 3rd year in the league. I want to see him get 130, 140, maybe even go for the number 1 tackler in the NFL, some things like that. But not only that, just the way he's able to announce his presence, to be able to read an offense, to be able to shout to the other linebackers where he wants them to play, and his just speed, the speed from north to south and from sideline to sideline, the way he's able to get to running backs when they get the ball, the way he's able to get to a running quarterback potentially, the way he's able to defend the pass, right? All these things are things that make Tremaine Edmunds one of the best middle linebackers in the game, and that's why we cannot afford to have Tremaine Edmunds miss a lot of time. We've seen this linebacking core, Matt Milano goes out, lose a little bit of something. We do not want to see what this linebacking core looks like if Tremaine Edmunds goes down for an extended period of time. Number 5 on this list of players I at least want to see get injured for the Buffalo Bills, or who the Bills could least afford to miss some time, is Cole Beasley. That's right, we have 2 wide receivers on this list. However, Diggs and Brown are nowhere to be seen. And why is that? You might ask. Listen, Cole Beasley is the only veteran wide receiver on this team that has that type of skill set, right? Everyone has always complimented Cole Beasley about how he can get open, his ability to find openings in coverages. Those type of things cannot be found easily, and that's why Cole Beasley is just that big of an asset, right? When you look at Brown, you look at Diggs, kind of familiar skill sets, right? If you lose Diggs, you still have a burner in Brown. If you lose Brown, you still have your burner in Diggs. So you don't lose too much there. Obviously, you want both of them on the field as well, but the one who would hurt you the most at wide receiver would be Cole Beasley. That's why he is number 5 on a list of players the Bills can least afford to get injured. I'm guessing that if I would have told you I had 2 wide receivers on this list, you would not think it was Beasley and Andre Roberts, but those are the 2 wide receivers I think the Bills could least afford to get injured for a significant period of time. Now, if you told me both Diggs and Brown were to go out, then we would have some problems. But as far as individually, if Cole Beasley goes out, who do you have in the slot? You have to rely on a young draft pick then. I'm not saying they can't get the job done. I just like having that old vet in there instead. Then you move on to number 4, and for number 4, I am going to go into the best secondary duo in the league. Definitely one of the most underrated secondary duos in the league, and I'm going to go with our free safety, Jordan Poyer. We just signed Jordan Poyer to a little bit of an extension this past offseason, but if you take a second to think back to that playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars back in 2016, that would have been Hyde and Poyer's first year with the Buffalo Bills. Poyer went out in that game, and the Buffalo Bills defense, especially the secondary, struggled, okay? And I'm not saying someone like Dean Marlowe can't come in and be serviceable and can't do a serviceable job, but Carlos Hyde and Jordan Poyer just do a better job. I'm sorry, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer just do a better job when they are together on the field. And like I said, I think this duo is one of the most underrated duos in the NFL. I think you could put either one in this spot, whether it be Mike Hyde or Jordan Poyer. I just picked Jordan Poyer as the free safety. I always lean towards free safeties being more of a factor on a team than the strong safety. That's just my personal opinion. You may disagree, but you go either way here. Hyde, Poyer, either way, I think they complement each other so well that either one of them go out, we might be in trouble. But I personally think Poyer would be the bigger loss at free safety. So that's why I have him ranked as number 4 when it comes to players the Bills can least likely afford to lose. Moving on to number 3, and listen, this guy also just signed a contract extension this offseason, a few days ago, in fact, and I know we all know who number 1 and number 2 are going to be. It's just a matter of what order I have them in, but number 3 is going to be our left tackle, Dion Dawkins, and I know that some of you might not enjoy watching Dion Dawkins play all the time, but he does a much better job than what people give him credit for. And when Josh Allen can trust his left tackle, that just gives us all a sigh of relief, right? When Josh Allen can trust his left tackle and knows that his blind side is covered most of the time, that means Josh Allen can focus on other things. We earlier talked about John Feliciano already being out, a vet on that offensive line when we talk about Mitch Morris. Now you're talking about another veteran in Dion Dawkins that we just can't afford to lose. Again, we want to start as many offensive linemen as we can that started last year just to keep that continuity. And the left tackle is the most important position on that offensive line. That's why he gets paid so much, because he is protecting your quarterback's blind side. And that's why I think Dion Dawkins would be number 3 on this list of players the Buffalo Bills can least afford to lose for a significant amount of time in 2020. Moving on to number 2, and again, I think we all know who 1 and 2 are on this list. It's just a matter of order. Who's 1, who's 2? I'm not going to lie, guys. If we lose either of these two gentlemen, I think it's going to be a long season, at least if we lose them for a significant amount of time. Number 2 on my list is the same guy that just scared us a few weeks ago thinking about opting out, and that is cornerback TreDavious White. Listen, TreDavious White is an all-pro cornerback. I think the first 2 seasons of his career, he had been snubbed not only of a Pro Bowl, but of a Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year voting. I think that TreDavious White is the best cornerback in the league. That's my opinion. I know a lot of Bills Mafia agree with me. Forget Stephon Gilmore. TreDavious White did not allow a single touchdown against him last season. You can't say the same thing about Stephon Gilmore. In fact, you can't say the same thing about any other cornerback. He tied for the league lead with 6 interceptions. This is definitely a player that needs to be on this Buffalo Bills team, needs to start becoming the anchor of that defense, right? I know he's a younger guy. He hasn't had that veteran leadership cast on him just yet, but with Lorenzo Alexander now retiring, someone needs to step up. No reason why it cannot be TreDavious White. I think TreDavious White needs to stay where he is. I would love for him to get the contract extension to stay in Buffalo, but we definitely need him on the field in 2020. Without TreDavious White, we have a lot of question marks as far as the cornerback position that we cannot afford to have. Forget the fact that EJ Gaines decided to opt out. That doesn't matter. Just the fact that we have a number 1 stud corner makes it a lot more difficult for these quarterbacks to feel comfortable throwing the ball his general direction. So that's why I have TreDavious White. Number 2 on this list of players the Buffalo Bills can least afford to lose for a significant amount of time in 2020. And then it comes down to number 1. And listen, I think when you talk about the 32 teams currently in the NFL, most number 1s on a list like this would be the quarterback, right? The quarterback is just that important when it comes to playing on an NFL team. I think TreDavious White is the best player on the Buffalo Bills, but man, that quarterback position is just so important. And when you talk about Josh Allen, coming into his 3rd season as the Buffalo Bills starter, there's a lot of things we want to see out of Josh Allen before we decide to pick up his 5th-year option, before we talk about a contract extension. And the last thing we want is to have to wait another year because of an injury setting him back this season. And then, of course, you talk about the talent on the field without having Josh Allen there this year. I don't know how much we could trust Barkley, right? I like Matt Barkley. I think he's a great backup quarterback, and for a game or 2, he might be serviceable. But when you're talking about being injured for a significant amount of time, I'm talking 5, 6, 7, maybe even more weeks of a season, you cannot lose your starting quarterback and expect to be anywhere close to playoff caliber when he comes back, if he comes back. So when it comes to the number 1 guy that the Buffalo Bills can least afford to see get injured once they put the pads on starting tomorrow, it has to be our quarterback. It has to be Josh Allen. So I have Josh Allen as the number 1 guy the Buffalo Bills can least afford to see go down for a significant amount of time. So let me know in the comment section, what do you think? Do you agree with my list, or do you think I'm just crazy? Do you think TreDavious White should be number 1? Do you think Micah Hyde should be on this list? Do you think Andre Roberts does not belong on this list? Let me know in the comment section what you think. And again, give me your top 10. Who do you think the Buffalo Bills can least afford to lose for a significant amount of time entering the 2020 NFL season? Guys, again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Believers Talk. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for continual Buffalo Bills and Buffalo sports news. Less than 30 days away from kickoff, guys. I'm very excited. We'll be giving you a lot of prediction videos here coming up, so make sure you tune in for those. Hit that notification bell. Again, like this video if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I look forward to talking to you all soon. Until I do, go Bills.